Yeah, so it was April 2009. I won my first pro contest, one of the bigger events they had back then. Not quite X Games or Dew Tour level, but it was a big event that everyone tried to go to. And then after the contest, I landed a trick for the first time that I actually came up with that won me a brand new Harley Davidson. And that got me the invite to X Games. That was my second year, I believe, competing on the Do Action Sports Tour back then, which is no longer around for BMX. But that's like kind of what put my name out on the map further, I'd say, because a couple years prior, I entered a video contest that a bike sponsor or a bike brand put out to gain a sponsorship, and I made top 10. And back then in 2007, I believe it was, like YouTube was just coming out and being big, but content and social media wasn't really a thing. And there were the BMX website, vitalbmx.com, and the brand Haro Bikes. They came together to put out this video entry contest, and the top 10 were flown out to Greenville, North Carolina to train for 2 or 3 days with Ryan Nyquist, Rob Darden, and Colin McKay, who were the top 3 Haro Bike professional athletes. And we basically filmed a reality show with all of us competing essentially for one spot. And then the winner was picked at the end, and then myself and a bunch of other riders got on the amateur version of the sponsorship. And that's kind of what put all of our names out there. But then fast forwarding 2 years later, winning that contest is what really put my name out into the forefront of people's awareness, because I was kind of like the not even the underdog. I was the unexpected that came out of nowhere, and then all of a sudden won this contest. Who the winner of it from the year prior, I believe, who was one of the most known athletes in BMX for winning besides Dave Mira, he got second place and I got first. And then I won the best trick contest as well, and never been done trick in competition. And so that just put me into a lot of momentum throughout the 2009 season. And then 2010, March 2010, trying a new trick for the first time on a real ramp outside of the foam pit to make sure I work out the kinks for the same contest coming up in April of 2010. And that trick went wrong, resulted in a concussion and an MRI. Now, the interesting thing about this MRI was throughout the course of the year prior, I've been going in complaining of headaches, migraines, vision loss, vomiting, nausea, all these things, and asking for a scan of my brain, X-ray, CAT scan, MRI, something. I didn't know at the time. I know now the difference between all of them and what they're important for and what they can and can't see. But I was like, hey, there's something wrong with me. And they kept judging me by my cover. They kept saying, you're young, you're in shape, you're healthy, blood work doesn't show anything, you just have headaches, here's some pain pills, come back if you need more. Lo and behold, I didn't have a pain pill deficiency, because fast forwarding to March 2010, when I hit my head, had to get MRI now, they found a massive brain tumor. They didn't find any swelling besides where the tumor location was with pressure or bleeding, like a TBI. They found a brain tumor. And that's what started my journey into auditing really every aspect of my being and how I could optimize it to be better on my bike, which really helped me hone in on nutrition, exercise, mindset, and apply that. And I came back stronger than ever. But yeah, it was that crash that led to the MRI that saved my life. And something I love sharing is like, damn man, like if I didn't fall and hit my head, I'd be dead today. Yeah, so from diagnosis to surgery was about a week and a half. I forget exactly. I'd have to go back and look at the paperwork, but the diagnosis may have been into April, because April 16th was my surgery. So I forget the time frame of like hitting my head maybe at the end of March, and then not getting the diagnosis to early April, whatever it was. But the first couple of days, like instantly, when the way it was described to me was, one, I was by myself because I was living in North Carolina by myself with my friends, and two, I thought I was just going in to be told, stay off your bike another week or two from typical protocol of concussions. And so the way it was described to me was, when the doctor came in, he said that there was something abnormal with the scan, and I was like, damn, like I know, like I fall asleep in an MRI machine, I can fall asleep really easily, and I twitch when I'm falling asleep. So I was like, oh, did I move? Because I know if you move, the images don't come out clearly and you have to redo them. And he said, no, like the images came out clear, but there's something in your brain that shouldn't be there. And I remember laughing out loud, being like, well, what do you mean? I can't put anything in my brain, so what are you saying? And then he went on to say, well, this time we don't know if it's benign or cancerous, but we do know that the mass that's in your brain needs to be taken out if you want a shot at living. And by the way, you'll probably never be able to ride your bike again, or at least at the level what you do today. And all I heard was cancer, never going to ride your bike again, you may die. And that's what I took on as my belief in that situation was, I'm going to die. And so throughout the week and a half, I started to understand other people have overcome challenges. And my mom to this day is alive, healthy and well, but for 10 plus years, she battled colon cancer. She hid it from me for quite a bit, at least the severity of it, from my comprehension as a 17-year-old leaving to pursue my dream, because that was her dream, to see me pursuing mine and being, happy. But I remember, I'm a part of my mom, and she overcame this. I had that same courage and strength that she installed in me. And then learning about Lance Armstrong's story at the time, which I just went and rewatched his 30 for 30 yesterday. And 2010 was around the time where a lot of his doping lies were coming out. And then, or I think he retired in 2010. And in 2012, which is relevant to the second diagnosis I went through, was when he came out and talked about it, something like that. But the timeline was super transparent as far as like what path I was on in terms of like negativity. But regardless, he was a model of success to me. He was an inspiration as far as, here's someone that looks a little like me from this country doing something that I'm doing on a bike, a little different objective, but went through brain, lung, and testicular cancer and came back. Regardless of how people think he went about it and if it was justified because everyone else was cheating with doping and this and that or not, to get back to the level of competition he did with or without performance enhancing drugs was phenomenal. The reason I can say that confidently today is because one, I went through a brain surgery, and two, I didn't have chemo. He had chemo, and I know what that does to someone's body. And the fact that he overcame all that and it came back to the level which he did and happened to win multiple times, which, that's up for debate depending on the context of the person. None of that mattered to me. What mattered to me was, here's someone doing something similar that I'm doing that is facing a circumstance that face a circumstance that I'm facing now. In my mind, it was 3 times as worse. Not even to mention, at the time, I didn't know if what I had was cancer or benign, which we found out later was benign. But that person overcame it, and they got back to doing what they loved. So there was a shift in my focus. And so rather than focusing on what if I don't wake up one day, I started to focus on, well, that person did it. What do I want? I started focusing on what I wanted and what I was going to do when I got out of surgery. And that was going to be the best version of myself. I was going to do everything I could to continue living my dream and progress. And that's what I did. Yeah, I was, after surgery, I was riding 5 weeks later. And and also I want to say, I'm sorry about your mom. And that's something that the woman that was in the 30 for 30, who was someone who was also inspired by Lance's story, was alive. And because of Lance's work and Livestrong's work, her battling cancer and chemo, she was able to preserve her eggs before she went through chemo treatment. And now she has 4 kids. So that's what, when people are like, oh no, he cheated, like how could you like someone like that, like I'll never forgive him, they hate on him. It's like, man, like he was 20, 21, and after listening to many of his interviews and reading his books, to have no one in your life really telling you no, to have a whole economy built around your name, that you're employing people and then you have all this money and power, and to have that ego boosted to that level, and then you have a foundation riding on that, saving lives, transforming lives, raising tons of money. The whole Nike story around, they made 5 million of those yellow wristbands, sold them for $1 and gave all that, that's $5 million that wasn't there. But then that woman's story of him sharing something, and this is part of probably why I share so openly, but how he was preserving his sperm because, he had to obviously have one testicle removed, and then chemo. One of the side effects that back then, what she was sharing was, it's not talked about, it wasn't talked about back then, that the risk could be for infertility. So by reading his article and her doctors not saying anything about it, she took the initiative to preserve her eggs and has 4 children today. So that's when people, try to share, or they don't try, they express negativity towards him. I'm like, I get it. I get it. I could try to understand where you're coming from, but at the same time, what your mom found in him, what I found in him, what many others found in what he represented and what he did, is not to be dismissed by his choices that he learned from. And he lost everything, and that's what they talk about in the 30 for 30. Like, and then what his kids had to go through, which he created that. Like, it's enough of what he went through, and then what came from all the hate, and then what his children had to go through, that when people say things like that, I'm always intrigued by their perspective. And then I usually ask, well, how much do you know about the situation? And typically it's, oh, he lied for years, he actually cheated, and then that's it, he's a bad person. It's like, man, there's so much more. So I just want to take some time to appreciate the fact that your mom and I shared that we found some type of inspiration and hope to continue focusing on the fact that we may be okay. We will have a better quality of life just because of that belief in that moment, and that so many other lives have been transformed. But ultimately, that's what inspired me to do the work I do today. It just took 2 more diagnoses to wake up to that purpose that I was being led towards, and which ultimately stopped me riding my bike. So yeah, I forget what you were just asking about, but I wanted to acknowledge, that part about your mom and just the whole correlation with Lance and people finding inspiration or finding hate with what happened with him and his reality ultimately.